Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Audio Wave Network studios here on Detroit's Lower East Side, powered by the East Side Community Network, and sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform for authentic voices for real people on the East Side of Detroit. We want you to like and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. We will now be dropping a new EP every week. And we have three very special guests in the building with us today. We have Gary Anderson from the Plowshares Theatre, who is celebrating or just celebrated their 30th organizational anniversary.
That's right.
And they happen to be the only Black professional theater company in the state. Is that right?
That is true.
Wow. And we also have Mike Rafferty, who is the CEO of New Detroit Inc., coming up on 7 months. We want to welcome Mike Rafferty. And announcing Lauren Hood, who is the new program director for New Detroit Inc. That is so major. How is everybody doing? How was everybody's weekend?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, so it's good.
What were you up to, Donna?
Well, I went to a ball. I went to the 104th Annual Midwest Independent Retailers Ball, which it was a great big ball. It was at the Mirage. DTE. Oh. I was invited by DTE, so DTE had 6 tables, and it was an interesting time to be there because you've seen all of the conversation that's taken place between Joanna Underwood and Lamar Lemons regarding Keldy and store owners. And so let's just say that they were super nice to us. And we were treated very well. No, I mean, it's an interesting time because when you go to places like that and you get to interact with a lot of people in a professional domain, it's helpful to remember that these are people behind these stories and these accusations on both sides of the story. And I had a great time. It was a beautiful location. It was the Mirage in Sterling Heights or in Clinton Township. I don't know if you've been there.
No.
But it was casino night. So we had chips. The dealer was cheating and giving us more money. But it was all play money. So I walked out just as broke as I was walking in. How was your weekend?
Oh, man. Dang. I was like, did you win anything?
I did. I won some play money.
I don't want no play money. Give me the real money.
Like Monopoly.
I know, right? Jeez. My weekend was pretty good. I attended a financial wellness seminar called Financially Lit. It's a play on financial literacy.
Yeah, I get that.
It was super cool. And they had like the logo decked out and, just making sure, as we get older and we start thinking about retiring and investing and all of that stuff, we're doing good. But, there's always more stuff that I can learn. So I took that course. And,
who sponsored that?
my cousin in his church, True Life Christian Church, sponsored Financially Lit on Saturday morning. So I got up Saturday morning and was in the venue at 9 a.m.
I'm so impressed.
I know, right?
Right.
I was there like right on time. So it was cool. And then, of course, yesterday happened. And then my weekend ended. I don't know about you guys. How are y'all?
Wow, I was in the theater all weekend, so I didn't see. I went in at Can't See It the morning and left at Can't See It at night. So
Yeah.
that was my weekend.
These winters are something else, right?
Yeah,
Golly,
sure.
the days need to last just a little bit longer.
But we'll eventually have spring.
Hopefully. We kind of feeling it a little bit now.
Yeah, for a couple hours, and then you aren't feeling it anymore. I was at the Click when I found out. I was just scrolling through, and I saw it, and I couldn't even speak for a while. I was just trying to look up, is this really true, before I said anything.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to believe it, right? And so I'm sitting there at brunch, and it's like, I'm not talking until I figure out if this thing is real. And then I saw it was, and just when I was about to say something, somebody shouted out something in the restaurant. The whole restaurant got involved and wanted to know if it was true or not.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I remember where I was when Michael Jackson passed away. I remember where I was when Whitney Houston passed away.
Me too.
And Prince, and now Kobe. And actually, I remember when Aaliyah passed away unexpectedly. And, so these tragic or unexpected deaths, I'm always out somewhere. I'm never at home. And
yeah, me either.
It's weird. So what about you? How did that impact you, Mike?
I mean, it was hard. I was at home
I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, so I was, refereeing wrestling matches and things like that with the kids. And when I found out, I had to explain to my 8-year-old what was, why we were so moved. And it's pretty hard to explain to a kid and kids what larger than life figures mean to you, and what their passing means to a lot of other people. And so it was. I wish I had been out and hanging out with people my own age, because I had to kind of step away from the experience myself to shepherd them through it. But yeah, and I've got to apologize. I'm kind of getting over something right now, so I may sound a little raspy.
Mike trying to get his Billy D. This ain't Lady Sings the Blues, Mike.
That Colt 45 voice on there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to. My bad.
That's good. That's good. It's all good.
Oh man, I too was out to lunch, and it came across my timeline, and nobody else was reporting it but TMZ, and for some reason,
and that doesn't seem legit enough.
Right.
So I was
TMZ
like, when
is not
CNN
legit.
chimes in, when CNN doubles down on it, then it's real.
So,
I did the same thing.
I was looking for ESPN or LA Times to confirm
Well,
something.
The first thing I got was text from my son and other friends who were saying this can't be true.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people who denied it because, like you said, TMZ was the only
Not
one out there
legit.
for hours.
Yeah.
The TMZ broke the passing of. I mean, they
broke Prince for me.
They broke Prince.
Yeah.
And so what I questioned was, what does integrity mean for news organizations? Because during the press conference, those officials actually alerted the public that Vanessa Bryant found out that her husband and child passed away through TMZ.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
What responsibility rests on news organizations? And if TMZ is a legitimate news organization, which I think we gotta start holding them to that standard before we break news. TMZ had it out for at least an hour before anybody else confirmed.
That's right.
And I think people had the story, but they were waiting
For confirmation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel as though TMZ is reliable and unethical at the same time. So you kind of believe what they're saying and wish you didn't hear about it in the way that you did. News was, leaking out all day. There were people who said that Rick Fox and his daughter were on the plane. And it just started a whole lot of gossip. And so this whole mindset of we have to be the first to break the news really creates an ethical, dilemma. And I think that, unfortunately, TMZ doesn't have even the journalistic standard of trying to figure out how to break horrible news where families should be notified. Because it's one thing to talk about, this person got arrested, which is still bad news, but it's another thing to say that Kobe Bryant died at 41 in a helicopter crash and his 13-year-old daughter was lost. And even though the rest of the public didn't know that his 13-year-old daughter was on the plane initially, Vanessa Bryant had to know. Then when they said there were no survivors, that her daughter did not survive. Right. So it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. And, I mean, some of the things that I heard was that some news source had leaked out that his entire family
exactly.
That was ABC.
Yeah.
ABC inaccurately reported that Kobe Bryant and his family were all aboard.
Yeah. Well, that's that competition thing, though, right?
Right.
Exactly.
So if you got this news and you broke the news, I don't know if ABC was critical or jealous and wanting to jump in there with their own breaking news.
Right.
But it's all wrong. And then there's so much speculation. I was talking to one of our staff members at ECN who absolutely loves Kobe. And he said it was really hard for him because in his chat group, so many people were speculating why this happened and who did it. And it was really hard for him. I mean, he was crying all yesterday, and I knew he was. So I actually reached out to him because I knew he would be upset. This is his hero, right?
Yeah.
And to read that and then hear all the speculation, can we let the tragedy suffer? I mean, the tragedy sink in before we start, I didn't post on it. I couldn't because you don't want to seem like, oh, let me be the first to tell this.
Right.
I didn't even want to talk about it. So I responded to a few other people who waited until the night and just expressed themselves, but not like at 1:24 or 1:30 when TMZ posted it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things was the number of the detail of the number of other victims of the tragic incident kept changing.
It was 5,
It was
and then 9.
It was 3. It was
Yeah.
5, and then 9, and then this morning, one source was talking about 10, and I was like, wait a second. But they were naming it, and it only racking up to 9 names. So
Before we leave this topic, I just want to bring up one other thing, and that is that I was really disappointed in Orlando, and I talked about this earlier, by some of the news sources referencing some of his past, which did not have to be referenced now.
Sure.
And it makes you wonder whether a black man can ever be whole. If you are tried and acquitted of a crime, then you are not a criminal, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't need to bring that up in any future conversations because you are innocent. But for some reason, I was listening to, I don't know if it was NPR or some station, and they had to bring up this fact. And it really just, and then the person who was reporting on it referred to him as an American icon and talked about how she was so sad because he was an American icon. This man left behind a wife and 3 daughters.
Yeah.
I don't care about your iconic vision of this man. This is a personal tragedy first. And then it's, but it's creating him into an icon and taking away his humanity and then bringing up all of these other things that really had me hurting yesterday. And I know Orlando felt the same.
Yeah, it was definitely triggering to me. Once again, I think it was the Washington Post, and I was really infuriated that had a headline talking about Kobe's complicated legacy or tainted legacy, and it triggers something for me because just historically in this country, the lives of black men have been shattered and taken away by accusations from white women that were inaccurate or just downright false. And here is a man who was acquitted, who is not a criminal, who still has this attached to his name. And it just made me wonder, and it just made me sad. Can we just have our lives? You know what I mean? Yeah.
And certainly not the legacy.
No.
Yeah.
There is a constant challenge on that. That is our ever-present problem. A number of us, and you can see this replete throughout history, of black men, black women who have excelled in any area where they find themselves, and still in their obituary or somewhere in their
coverage
biography, they will be talking about this issue, this one individual, this one opportunity where they faltered. And the idea is, are we going to measure an entire life by one incident, which may have been an error in judgment?
Absolutely. Absolutely an error in judgment.
But how is that the way we're going to frame an entire
Define
life?
his whole 41
Exactly.
years.
But when you define my life by an accusation that was not proven, right? That was not proven to the point I was acquitted, that's even worse to me. It's all bad. It's all horrible. I hate all of that. But when you do it, then you have to say that black men are permanently criminals first in the eyes of America. It's like if you slip or you are perceived to slip, you will never be whole again. And so Orlando and I spent some time, and I just think it's important for us to uphold our own legends, our own people, and not allow other people to shape how we view things.
Absolutely.
This is a tragedy. This man was not only one of the greatest basketball players in the history of the world, but he also was the father of 4 children. He had done so many positive things. Didn't he win an Academy Award for a short film?
Last year.
And he was on his way to a basketball camp
with his daughter
in his name, Mamba, which is really amazing, with his daughter, and he was supporting girls in sports. And so here is a man who was criticized of doing something that was anti-girl, anti-woman, and towards the end of his life, he's championing his daughter. He said that the reason he watched basketball again was because of Gianna. And so let's remember to protect the legacy of people who we admire. So many people wanted to emulate him, not because of his basketball skills, but because of his discipline, his striving for
work
excellence,
ethic.
his work ethic, all of the kinds of things that we tell young people to do. So
I don't think non-Black people understand why.
This heartbreak.
Or why
hurts.
our Black icons mean what they do to us. I was wondering earlier if there's something about marginalized folks and having those of us succeed that make them mean more to us. You know what I mean? Because, like, if white folks lost a soccer player, some of the soccer fans would be sad, but not everybody. Mm-hmm. I'm not a sports fan, but I'm sad that we lost Kobe. I feel like there is a bond between groups of minority people that make our icons mean more to us than just their profession.
Well, when you've lived long enough and you actually see the challenges that all of us are beset with, regardless of what part of the world we function in, and then you see somebody excel, become the pinnacle in their career, in their field. Mm-hmm. That means that you have an opportunity. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Chris Rock used to
be great.
Right. Chris Rock used to tell this joke, about measuring your aspirations. He said, for example, it wasn't until he saw Janet Jackson with Jermaine Dupri that he thought he had a shot, right? But that's a joke. But I think that also kind of focuses on how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
And representation in the world matters so much to us that, in fact, in many cases, when those individuals are brought low or they're seen to be tarnished in some fashion, that has a greater impact because we see ourselves reflected in them so often. I mean, I tell everybody that, the first time I realized I could be a director in the theater was the day I learned the name of two men, Woody King Jr. and Lloyd Richards. Mm-hmm. And both of them were Detroiters, right? Mm-hmm. And they had excelled at some level in their careers. And I said, well, if they can do it, knowing from whence they both of them came from meager circumstances, that made sense that I could also
right.
do
but
that.
I also don't want to take away from the fact that there are certain white people, Black people cannot talk about, right? So, there are certain icons that are held up there that they also hold dear. And we're not allowed to interfere in that space. We're not allowed to even look at the fact that Thomas Jefferson was a slaveholder and who raped the young women, a young woman. But we have to hold him up as a hero because he was a man of his times, and that's the way things were back then. There are people who are still protecting statues of Robert E. Lee. So it also says that the majority culture gets to dictate who we hold dear. All the time they'll say, well, this isn't the kind of person who you should celebrate. You should celebrate somebody like Ben Carson. Or they want to choose our heroes, and you can't choose my heroes for me.
Right.
My heroes are based on things I recognize in people who are successful. Do you remember Vanessa Williams and the way they tried to destroy her, Miss America?
Yeah.
So, and she is my age. I was, coming of age at the same time she was. And I remember her being lifted up and then toppled by the very same people who lifted her. And I think that, like I said, I think it's important that we learn to protect our own legacy. And we're going to talk about it later, but that's why what Gary does is so important through Plowshares is that he's controlling or at least helping to shape narrative around Black identity.
We're extremely dedicated to the importance of Black stories, and that's actually our whole mission as a Black theater company, telling the stories of African Americans from an African American perspective for an African American audience. Other people can listen, other people can enjoy, but the idea is that we are telling a perspective that is not always represented when we discuss the history of this country.
Right.
So hug your Black sons and daughters, even if they're grown, if they're 30, like me and JG, growing up with Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson, who completely changed basketball. Our hearts are broken. Like, this hurts. So let's love on each other and hug each other and make sure we're good. And prayers and thoughts to the Bryant family, his wife, and his surviving children. It's time for Fresh Off the Press, news that we are thinking about. This is our commentary on news items relevant to the city of Detroit. If you have news items that you want us to cover, you can send them to authenticallydetroit@gmail.com or hit us up on our socials at authenticallydetroit. Donna, fresh off the press.
Bloomberg's multi-billion-dollar plan for Black economic justice and empowerment. This is by Selena Hill for Black Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So, when Bloomberg said he was running for office, I thought there is no way Mayor Stop and Frisk is going to make another billionaire. Come on now, another billionaire running for office. And this is just not the right time for him. And then he came out with something that was pretty strategically brilliant. It is this whole concept of the Greenwood Initiative and playing on something. What's the name of the TV show that just highlighted? Watchmen. That's right. We're in the Watchmen group, Gary.
Yeah.
Gary actually started a Facebook group for people who watched Watchmen. But a lot of people learned, and apparently Bloomberg learned about the
3 months ago.
Greenwood Initiative 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And
3
so
months.
he had this idea that he was going to start something new.
Mm-hmm.
And so his idea is to invest $70 billion into 100 disadvantaged neighborhoods around the country. And another major pillar is of the plan is to help 100,000 Black business owners gain access to capital. And that's pretty, ingenious when you talk about people investing in disadvantaged neighborhoods. I never know if they mean grants or loans.
Yeah.
Because when J.P. Morgan Chase came here, I think people thought they were going to invest $20 million in grants inside of Detroit, but a lot of those were loan dollars. So I think we have to just be very careful about the terminology that we accept because there is a certain amount of qualification. But I have some questions for you guys. Who was the first president who ran for office under a banner of Black capitalism?
Ran for president?
Ran for
I know the
president
answer.
under the banner of Black capitalism.
But
I read this book by Race for Profit by Keeanga Yamada Taylor, and she's the one who reminded me that it was Richard Nixon.
No.
Richard Nixon. The Black capitalism is a forgotten aspect of Richard Nixon's Southern strategy. Mr. Nixon's solution for racial ghettos was not economic justice, but tax breaks and incentives. This deft political move allowed him to secure the support of white Southerners and to oppose meaningful economic reforms proposed by Black activists. After the Civil Rights Act, Black activists and their allies pushed the federal government for race-specific economic redress. The whites-only signs were gone, but joblessness, dilapidated housing, and intractable poverty remained. And in 1967, Blacks had 1/5 of the wealth of white families. So during that campaign, there were some people who pushed for housing integration. George Romney was one who really pushed for housing integration and actually ended up the head of HUD under Richard Nixon. While he was helping Black business owners and investing in Black capitalism, therefore kind of splitting the Black community into some supporting him, what he also was doing was creating a framework to stop Black integration into white suburbs. When Romney tried to push forward with the plan inside of Detroit, the mayors of Ferndale and some of the other municipalities around Detroit wrote Richard Nixon, and he almost lost his job. And then you had this whole era of predatory inclusion that took place where banks and real estate agents were selling housing to low-income people that was not really fit to live in and giving them loans based on not doing the proper inspection and the proper appraisals. And so you can see where somebody can throw money at those at the top, and those at the very bottom of our economic structure are not benefiting. I'm more interested, personally, in structural reform than these nice programs that may or may not work. And so if the $70 billion he throws at the problem don't work, then what is the lesson that we get there? These people.
We're too broken. We're too broken to be solved. $70 billion is a tremendous amount of money to throw at anything, and all of a sudden it didn't work. So what's the real? It's them.
Right.
they're the problem.
And that's the lesson people took away from the 1970s is look at all the money we gave them, not looking at the framework in which we gave it to them. So I say to my brothers and sisters who are looking at the Greenwood Initiative that everything that glitters really is not gold, and we really have to look at structural and systemic solutions to structural and systemic injustice if we're going to see change in America.
Can I say this, that I'm triggered by the term black capitalism. First of all, I don't know what it means, and when I think about capitalism, I think of a system and a structure that black people were not supposed to be able to thrive in.
That's right.
And we are still very much at a huge disadvantage when we look at the structure of capitalism. And so when we talk about investment in all of these different neighborhoods, okay, so I understand geography, but who within these neighborhoods will the investment go to? Like, where is this capital being stewarded to? Is it being stewarded to people like Donna? Is it being stewarded to people like me? Or is it going to folks who already have access to capital and access to power to solve and save these quote unquote, I think the article used dilapidated neighborhoods? And therein lies the problem.
Well, in many cases, it'll follow the same pattern that we saw with the casino investments in this community, where there was a class of individuals who were gatekeepers who were able to benefit from that, whereas there were a lack of opportunities for other people to get in on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like our neighborhood development works within that same framework. Aren't we only giving access to capital to a certain class of black people? So now real estate developers are black, but there's still black people that have access and standing. And so what's the difference?
Exactly. But except that you have more money. And so you therefore incentivize more people to get involved in this rat race towards the top. You know, I remember there was a person who worked for the city one time, and he said, I believe Jesus was a capitalist. So I had to reread the Bible. And I was like, I don't think so. Let me see I need to see this in red because I don't see any of that. But, I really believe that, collectivist somehow mindsets, this concept that a rising tide lifts all boats. So we've got to rise together, and we've got to figure out how to create reciprocal value and opportunity for people, because when some of us rise to the top, then when we fall, we all kind of fall together. Black wealth plummeted.
It's a hands-off mindset when we talk about capitalism and a free market economy. It's virtually saying to black people, we are in a free market economy. If you are able to get access to capital to do your thing, go ahead and do your thing. But we're not really going to do anything. We're not going to provide reparations. We're not going to provide like real help. You're free. Go ahead and make it. The other piece is like, am I like proud and celebratory when black people succeed at capitalism? Like, I don't know if that's the goal. Like, I
have mixed feelings about that. I feel like
looking at pictures of the Rock Nation
in the
brunch.
movement, I think you need capitalists to fund other kinds of subversive activities. People need to be building other systems on the outside, but I feel like there needs to be a funding mechanism for that. Some people need to stay capitalists. We need people with money to fund it.
Yeah.
But the free market isn't really free. I mean, we
sure. Well, thinking about what you have to do to get capital as a capitalist, like it doesn't encourage you to spread the wealth.
Right.
So there's a
You hoard
mindset
it.
that has, So when it's tough, man, because these are some of our friends. I'm
Right.
like, you just doing what they doing, but with the black face.
That's right.
It doesn't help. It doesn't
Well,
help.
it
We are
not only
going
helps,
deep.
but
We are going so deep. I mean, where I go to when I think about capitalism and how it really, impacts us now. I mean, when we think about this linearly and go back to, how American capitalism really got started, it's not that different than now. It's off the backs of people who, are able to do it for free or cheap, right? And, right now we're talking about automation as being the solution and, creating robots and artificial intelligence and things like that, and having that be the thing that, subsidizes the wealthy, allows the wealthy the chance to get their stuff done with, limited investment in the cogs and the widgets and those who put them together. And like I wasn't expecting this conversation to go that deep, but like that's where I tend to think, right? Like, and so when we think about Black wealth and Black capital, it's almost like we are due. It's time for us to be able to enjoy the spoils of the system that we helped build.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
All right. Fresh off the press. A tale of two motor cities. As the city climbs out of decades of decline, many of Detroit's African-American residents feel they're being left behind. This is Joseph Williams at the U.S. News reporting. Our friend, shout out to Yusuf Shakur for sending this article to me. He's also featured in it. What the U.S. News is essentially chronicling is a problem that I know Lauren and I have publicly discussed time and time again around the investment strategy on part of the city and other investors in certain areas of the city, virtually leaving behind Black folks within the neighborhoods. The other thing that I sense, and I'll yield to the panel, is that there's also a sense of cultural anxiety that is permeating in our neighborhoods. I would never forget seeing this personified in a woman who lives in the villages, a Black woman, community activist. Villages are seeing a lot of development. Property value is, rising a little bit, and she owns a home in the villages area. And she was like, I don't like what's happening. I don't like what's happening. And I'm like, well, why? This is supposed to be a good thing, right? And she said, I feel like my neighborhood is losing its soul. And I didn't know what she meant by that until I read and educated myself on this form of cultural anxiety, losing what seeing development come, but not to your tastes, not to your interests, not to your culture. And I think that the U.S. News did an okay job chronicling that in this article. Yeah.
Well, I think that we talked about the last segment. We did The Other America, Martin Luther King Jr. speech. And in The Other America, we noted that, integration or desegregation happens in two different types of ways. One is when you have an outright racist saying no Black people can live here, like the mayor of Dearborn at one point. And the other one happens when there are practices that make it impossible for Black people to get ahead or to be included in neighborhoods. And those are the ones that are harder to fight off because people can say, well, we're not forcing you to move. You're allowed to move in here as long as you have the money. Our policy is dictated by standard metrics and not by race. But when the impact of a policy has an outcome that is racially different, then I think we have to look at whether or not that policy is contributing to injustice and to separate Detroits.
And we're talking about Detroit, so we can't talk about investment in Detroit without tackling the demographic makeup of the city of Detroit.
Or the history of how our makeup became the way it became.
Yes.
Exactly.
Lauren, you were featured in a book.
Which one?
How to Kill a City.
I
was reading that book.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
It's a couple.
How many?
I'm sorry. I did not.
I know of two. So Peter Moskowitz actually interviewed me, but I'm also in Alan Malik's book quoted, but I didn't meet him.
Well, he may have read Peter Moskowitz.
Maybe.
And actually, I really enjoyed that book. I thought he did a great job breaking down a lot of situations. But can you share some of what you shared in that book?
I believe what I talked most about was the city has all these efforts for attracting new people. And my question was, why aren't we retaining people like my parents who, lived most of their lives in the city, only left because of a home invasion. And I didn't realize how common their story was. They moved into a townhouse in Farmington Hills, and then my mom's like, oh, your dad met a new friend. I'm like, what's their story? She's like, same as ours. Home invasion on the northwest side, fled to the suburbs. So what are we doing to keep people who are paying property taxes and income taxes for decades, but who leave the neighborhoods? And again, it's not like they were forced out. but conditions arise that don't make it desirable anymore. So we have all these programs to attract new people, but we're hemorrhaging people that would provide as much tax base as these new people. But
and new people in certain spaces.
Yeah, we value new people more. We aren't doing anything to keep these legacy residents, as they're now being referred to, and I really like that.
I like
I
that.
love that
Yeah,
term.
right. Oh, you haven't heard that? Yeah.
No, I have. I think I
resident.
did pull that from How to Kill a City.
Yeah.
And I love the term because I think that it's important that not only are they are leaving a legacy, right?
Yeah.
Or we are leaving a legacy. Those of us who have been Detroiters are leaving a legacy, but we are also the inheritors of a legacy. And so I think that's really important stuff.
Yeah, if tax base really is the thing that's going to bring us back, then we need to be considering who's here and part of it right now, or how to get people that are already here who aren't a part of the tax base a part of it. But we don't have programs for that. It's just like, let's attract all the new sexy people we can.
But do you remember what Peter said about that in the book? Because he said something that's really profound and has never left me. And that was one of the reasons why cities are treating government or corporations or wealthier people who are moving in as customers is because our tax base is shrinking. And there's not enough revenue to perform certain aspects of city government. And so there's this almost desperation to get them at any cost. We will give any type of tax break to somebody who brings jobs and people.
But can't we just transfer the people that aren't working into the workforce? Wouldn't that do the same thing? Or get people who are underemployed better employed?
Well, we would need to work much harder doing different things. I think the Citizens Research Council of Michigan just came out with a report that noted that we are not doing the right things to help unemployed and underemployed people get into the workforce. So I agree with you, but I think that it requires a different type of investment and faith. I also think
and time.
And I also think, real quickly, that it's time for us to re-examine our taxing scenarios in Michigan. It's time for us to ask ourselves, does a Headley Amendment, does Proposal A work, and do we need to restructure taxation so that we can cover basic costs in our cities?
Yeah. And that's a state issue. We're going to have to fight on a state level as well.
Go ahead, Mike.
I want to tie together a few things that I'm hearing. We started this off talking about culture, and there being kind of a crisis happening in the city around culture and culture shift. And earlier we talked about Bloomberg's initiative of was it $70 billion? I don't know that giving $70 billion out willy nilly without good strategy is going to work. I think putting money like that into systems that are already in place to address some of the things we're talking about makes sense. It's not the job of bureaucrats or politicians to create the culture of a space. They just don't do it well. That's not their. Policy, yes. Services, yes. But those things don't make a soul. And we're talking about the soul of a place. This. I'm not pandering to my audience. Donna and Orlando, but community development. That is the industry for the most part that has and church. Church and faith-based organizations. Those are, sort of the industrial experts in helping to feed and create the soul and culture of a space. Those are the ones who directly engage with people. And if I think about how $70 billion could be spent, let's strengthen the community development industry across the country in neighborhood in cities like Detroit.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but I'm not sure it's always well deserved. I think that we have to be honest about ourselves about what community development corporations can and cannot do. You have some, like the Dudley Street Initiative, that have done a very good job, and we have some who have facilitated the gentrification of neighborhoods, either unintentionally or intentionally, so they can get a developer's fee. And so I think that $70 billion is not structural change. What some candidates are talking about is creating a wealth tax or creating a tax on higher income people that will put more money into the system so that people can afford to have certain things that they're now paying for made available. There was a time when our nation invested in affordable housing.
Absolutely.
And there was a time when there were incentives for affordable housing. There was a time we actually had public housing. Imagine that. If you don't have any money, you can live here for free. There was a time when we invested in childcare a little bit more fully than we do right now. And so I'm more interested in structural and systemic solutions than trusting people like me, because I do trust myself, but I know people who have not necessarily done the right thing, either because they didn't know how or because they weren't interested. I know people who run CDCs right now who are not interested in working with poor people. And we have to be honest about who we are as an industry. So...
Well, I mean, I think investing in the industry makes sense, but I think standardizing practices within the industry is important too. And I think part of the reason why you haven't standardized the practices is because of poor investment. Right? I mean, community development did not. I mean, we've talked a lot around various tables about how to strengthen community development, and part of that is educating and creating standards, within that system. And I mean, like it or not, I'm looking back over my short 44 years of life, and it's like I've never seen government, even when they were investing in affordable housing, that by itself wasn't culture. That by itself wasn't the spirit and the soul of the community.
I feel as though I worked at Community Health Awareness Group in 1985, and at that time we had general assistance in Michigan, and we also had a lot of housing subsidy. Organizations like United Community Housing Coalition would help. So when there was somebody who was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, and that was my clientele, we were able to get them an apartment, a television, a bedroom set, a living room set, and get them into a home, and they were supported by general assistance in 1985. Right now, there is no place for people. We're giving them sleeping bags that double as coats and calling that progress. And I think that we really have to ask ourselves what we are supposed to be doing from a structural standpoint, because there was very little homelessness in Detroit in the 1980s. Government did do a good job. So I'm not against government. I believe the government is better than the private sector. The private sector exists for one reason, and that's to make money. And the mission of a capitalistic society is making money, wealth building, wealth creation. And that has always worked to the disadvantage of black people in America since we were first brought over here as an asset.
As the tools.
Well, but the other thing that you also hit on is that we had fewer billionaires in 1985 too.
That's right.
Because the money was not distributed up to the top. We were able to invest in things like grants and programs that existed, like CETA. CETA is this fantastic program that was established in the 70s and was damaged by the Reagan administration when they redirected it and controlled exactly where the resources went, told people exactly how they were supposed to spend them. CETA was able to actually inspire the funding of several black theater companies around around Crossroads Theater Company in New Jersey, Oakland Ensemble Theater, and were CETA-funded programs initially.
I'm glad you mentioned the arts, because oftentimes I think we have a separate conversation when we talk about community development and the arts, and I see the two as one.
Absolutely.
They should be. The creative community in Detroit especially should be engaged in real estate work. I feel like that's how you maintain culture. I haven't always been into the arts, but over the past couple of years I've been going to gallery openings and talks, and I feel like the artist space is the only space that is kind of unrestricted. Like even in this work, like I have a boss who's Mike and he's great, but we have a board. You know what I mean? There's always some shadow entity at the top who really, kind of monitors what we do. I feel like the arts is the only place where you can be free. Artists are saying all kinds of crazy stuff, and there's no one to, no one to regulate
That's
it.
true, but I just also want to point out that artists are sometimes the first people to gentrify a neighborhood. And so artists sometimes,
they're used as a tool.
I'm not saying they're not, but what I'm saying is that, one of my questions is always, what do we consider art, right? Because certain things get considered art and treated as art, many other things do not. And I think that we need to be more inclusive. I'm all about including art and culture in community development. I think that Hispanic organizations or Latino organizations tend to do a better job at incorporating it, where you have but in America, a lot of times we look at everything in compartments, and we compartmentalize either you're doing housing or you're doing art. We're not doing housing through art. I think that really what we want is the community, residents and community, to dictate or have more control, so that the artist and those community development corporations, everybody in there is accountable to somebody. We're working in one neighborhood, the Manduka Hunt neighborhood, where there's an artist in that neighborhood at war with the people in that neighborhood, and the artist wants to expand their footprint inside the neighborhood. And the question
not
is,
just any artist. Are you talking about?
You know who I'm talking about.
But that's different. Normally, I think that artists are the first people who get gentrified out of a neighborhood.
That's right.
They go a place where
we saw that
they
happen
can
on Grand
afford
River
to live.
with,
They go where it's cheap,
Allied.
and they make it cool. And then
And
they have to
then-
go
Right.
because
They have
others
to-
come. Yeah.
well, I'm not disagreeing with
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying that sometimes. I'm not saying often. I'm not saying
Yeah.
most of the time.
That's a unique situation.
Well, there are other situations where I've seen artists come in and bring a different type of framework inside of a neighborhood, and people aren't always comfortable with it.
And so what I'm talking about is the legacy creation and culture and artist community that exists here in the city of Detroit that created electronic music that
Yes.
propelled the
House.
Motown sound into the world. I've traveled all around the world, and everywhere I went, I was hearing Smokey and I was hearing Aretha all over the world. I think that being able to prop that up and uplift those legacy artists who are here, who are still free to say everything is important and should not be seen as something separate. So what I'm essentially advocating for is a converging of the two, because
Agreed.
oftentimes
I agree with you.
we see community development organizations as one thing and our projects as one thing, and then we say, oh, we should do a mural, and then we call and
right.
contract the artist for
Right.
pennies,
Right.
and we throw a mural up there when I know for a fact that artists is the subset of people that create this soul that Miss Watts was talking about in Charlevoix Villages. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
we got
Well, my mother was an artist. My fiance is an artist, so
Yeah.
I love artists. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
that in reality, even when we look beyond that, I just think that a lot of times the artists who are moving in and the artists who are empowered are not the Black, Indigenous artists of that community. They aren't the ones getting the grants. They aren't the ones who are getting recognition. And so I think that we need to make sure that we are lifting up some of the people who are artists. We work with young people who are artists, but are they recognized as artists? How do you become an artist in Detroit or in any community?
Well, do you think that's a responsibility of a local community development organization?
Yes, I think that we can play a big role in helping make sure that there's equity on those issues, in identifying artists. When I was at Vanguard, I remember I had a grant from a foundation, and I wanted to use arts to teach young people.
Yeah.
And my foundation officer says, "What is more important, math or art?" And I said, "You need math and art, and they're connected. What is more important?" And she kept trying to get me to say that math was more important than art. So I don't think we ended up continuing that grant because, the idea is that you have to integrate. So I agree. Everything, math is integrated in art. Science is integrated in art, and if we're doing a good job, we're helping build children's imaginations and brains using the arts.
Right.
Just to kind of top this off, a good friend of ours, Damon Dickerson, who's an architect, a Black architect in the city who also lives in the villages, really sort of put to picture what that resident was talking about, even when we talk about this feeling of feeling welcome or unwelcome in certain spaces. And he talked about how Black people view spaces and how we view architecture. Architecture is a form of art, if you ask me.
It is, of course.
And, I think Western civilization has a standard of architecture now in the 21st century where everything is square, everything is sterile, and everything is, crisp and clean. Almost like a straight line. And what he did was he was like, Black people don't see things like that. He said he drew a zigzag.
Right,
This is how we see. This up here is how we see.
Right.
And so when we walk in spaces and we have this adverse reaction and we don't even know why we're having this react. I went to a coffee shop one day and had this reaction. I'm like, I don't like it in here. It's too white and sterile. I don't like it. He was like, that's why you don't like it, because you don't visualize that way. You don't see that way. And so even, infiltrating systems like the architecture world, I think there are only a few thousand Black architects in America.
And
like
he's going to be doing a project with us. But what he described was he compared architecture to jazz music.
Jazz. He was like,
and
we
I
see
was
it as
like,
jazz.
okay, he was higher. With the minute he compared it to jazz, we were like, okay, shut the noise.
This improvisational nature of, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that was so dope.
So that it's not reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs
and exposed
everything
air ducts.
white. Which, but I have to admit, my palate has become colonized. Sometimes when I travel, I look for that. I'm like, where's that space? Because it's familiar.
If I'm being honest,
I agree with you.
But yeah, what would our development landscape look like if more of our architects who are involved in these like development projects had that lens that Damon does?
Jazz
like, how would it look different?
Yeah.
Have you seen these pictures? Sometimes I've seen them online where they compare this house that might be a house that was owned by a person of color. Before, when it had all the ethnic, stuff, and then
Bells and whistles.
they
Then it gets generic.
then it gets redone, and
It
it's
gets white
generic.
box.
It looks, the color is white. It's got two tones, and the trellises and other things that were beautiful. And I don't have a lot of artistic language, despite all of my connections, but all of those things are lost because there's this desire to make everything homogenized. And so when we look at how we redevelop communities, also, how do we preserve that?
Well, I think that's why we have that cultural anxiety. Like, I travel as you do, and when you go to lots of cities around the country that are changing, they are all changing in the same way.
Right.
It's like the design is all converging to one point. It renders us, no longer unique.
Yes. Every downtown has the same elements, and in Detroit, every new apartment building has some of the same elements. I am so happy that Russell Baltimore is now the director of design for the city of Detroit.
I hope he's free to do what he can do.
He is.
Be free,
and
Russell.
I don't know.
I just saw Russell yesterday. I think that with the changeover in leadership in the city,
in the planning department,
it has freed things up. He is loving his job. I just saw him at Detroit Vegan Soul, and he seems still happy about his opportunity to make change. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see how this manifests.
Well,
that wraps up Fresh Off the Press. If you have any stories or news items that you would like us to cover, please hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Authentically Detroit, or you can send us an email at authenticallydetroit.com. So in our discussion this week, we're talking to Gary Anderson and what Plowshares has been up to. We're also going to hear from Mike and Lauren at New Detroit and talk a little bit about the organization's strategic direction and, how this hiring of Lauren Hood came about. We're breaking news here, y'all. But first, welcome, Gary, once again.
Thank you.
What are you guys up to?
We're right now in the final week. We're going to be opening on Friday with our first production of our season 2020, which is a brand new play called In. It's written by an artist. Her name is Adrienne Earl Pender. She's from North Carolina. And the play basically talks about a real live event. 100 years ago, in October of 1920, the play Emperor Jones by Eugene O'Neill premiered in the country. And the original actor that played the role of Brutus Jones was a man named Charles S. Gilpin. He became, within a few months, the most famous black man in this nation. He was invited to the White House to talk to President Harding about race relations. He received recognition from the NAACP, got the Spingard Award, all these other things that came to him because of this production. Theater companies around the country renamed themselves the Gilpin Players because that's how prominent he was. And within the decade, by 1930, he was dead in the ground, and all of his achievements had been lost to the annals of history. You don't know him. You know Paul Robeson, who took over the role and who played the role on film in 1933. You don't know anything about Charles Gilpin. And that's part of the mission of the company, to reclaim these stories about black people from the annals of our history, because Gilpin had a challenge with that play. It both provided him with a forum where he got recognized, the first black dramatic star. He got recognized by the Drama Guild, the first black individual to ever get recognized by this professional company organization in New York for his performance on Broadway. The first critically acclaimed black actor on Broadway. We had been musicals for decades by that point, but no black dramatic actor playing the lead in a role had ever been featured on Broadway. All these things occurred, but the play he was in, the character that he's playing, is a man who uses the N-word 29 times within the script. And Gilpin was challenged by that. He eventually began to change the dialogue in performance, which created challenges between he and the author, Eugene O'Neill, to the point that by 1926 he was not allowed to do the show any longer. His relationship with O'Neill had been challenged, and his career was pretty much at its lowest ebb. So, and like I said, he's dead within 4 years. Gilpin is one of those people who attempted to stand up on principle and fight for the issues about representation, the things we were talking about, and first voice. Because he saw his role as the artist was there to inform O'Neill of what a black man was like. And in the play we have with T. Farrell Muhammad is playing Charles S. Gilpin, Lisa Logan is playing his wife Florence, and Scott Norman is playing Eugene O'Neill. We have those three characters really pitting the challenge to see what the pressures were that Gilpin was under, the economic challenges of what this job provided him in regards to the flexibility and what he was able to bring to his family, stuff that we were talking about just a minute ago. But it's also talking about the what happens when you are picked out of the crowd as the one that the establishment says you are the good one, right? And then what happens when they want to take that away from you, right?
We have to. Need to stop for a minute, because is there anybody in this room who has not been the good one?
Wow.
And had to face down being the good one?
Exactly.
And being taken out.
Right. There you go.
Hello. You're so articulate. Oh my gosh.
But that's what the story tells. And it also is about who. We were talking about art just a moment ago, and we were talking about the importance of it in the community. The theater is a collaborative art. You just don't create it out of... The writer doesn't write the play and then it just comes alive, right?
Yeah.
The writer writes the play. The actor brings the character alive off the page. And the director and the other artists help render the world in which they live in. And in this play, we have the conversation about art, about who is actually the voice that's being represented here when we see the performance. And so all these things, which I think are critically important, the kind of things that we have not really had conversations about in this city for quite a while on a prominent level, I think we provide an opportunity for us to have those by viewing this show. Because what I really want is I want people to start thinking about the importance of other stories, other individuals, men and women who are from the history that we don't know anymore.
That's right.
Because there's this proverb that says you die 3 times. The day you take your last breath, the day they put you in the ground or they cremate you. The last death is when they forget your name. Yeah. And there are black people in this country who have made a significant contribution that we have forgotten who and what they are.
I think that's why Maya Angelou created that poem, We Speak Your Names.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So I'm so intrigued, but you're gonna repeat this 1,000 times because I want people to go see it.
Right.
Where can we go and see
it? We are performing it at the Marygrove College Theater. On West McNichols at Wyoming. The show begins this Friday night. Performances are 7:30 on Friday. They are 8 o'clock on Saturday and 2 o'clock on Sunday.
This Friday, January 31st.
Right. And we run until February 16th.
Okay.
Now, there's a special thing.
Right.
Speaking of marrying community development to arts, there's a special relationship between Eastside Community Network and Plowshares we're about to roll out.
Right.
Is it?
Yes,
okay.
we are.
Break the news.
I talked to Donna about this. We'd like to make a special offer to ECN members and engagers that we would do 2-for-1 tickets for our shows, not just for this show, but for the remaining shows going forward. So people who are connected with ECN will be able to purchase 2-for-1 tickets the first week of the shows.
My date night is already set.
There you go.
I might see you there.
Yeah.
And, now we have a new benefit for members of Eastside Community
That's
Network.
right.
If you become a member for any, we don't have a price, we just have a request that you give something.
Right.
Then you can receive this benefit.
Right.
And so we'll be rolling that out in 2020.
Yeah.
And then trying to make
congratulations
sure
on
that
30 years.
Congratulations
Yeah.
on 30 years. I want to make sure people see this.
I think it
And I
really
want to
is,
make
so.
sure our young people see this
Yeah.
because they need to know they come from greatness.
That's true. That's true.
And, I just want to highlight once again, we said it a little bit in the beginning of the show that Plowshares is the only professional Black theater company in the state of Michigan.
Yes.
Wow. So it's a huge responsibility.
It
It's a
we shouldn't
huge
be the only
honor.
one. We shouldn't be the only one.
You should not be, but you are. And you've been carrying that torch, and I can imagine carrying it well.
Well, but it's been heavy, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's been challenging.
heavy.
What and I've talked about this with other friends and family. What I'm planning on doing is I've given my board a statement that I've got another 10 years in me. Not that I'm going away, but I really am trying to set up the company so that I can hand off the leadership to a next generation.
I love it.
I believe that it's really important that our institutions are sustained
Succession.
Yeah.
by new talent, new energy coming in, that they are not that we don't have founders who are 60, 70, 80 years
Still running
organizations and thinking that they're fresh and dynamic.
Huh?
I mean, I continue to try to learn what I can, but we need new voices. We need a new generations of people involved.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, it's an honor. It's a pleasure. We should mention that Gary Anderson is also one of the founders of Plowshares. I don't think we mentioned that. Yeah.
He's one of the founders of Plowshares, and I don't mean to be negative or talk about negative stuff, but it was a chore keeping Plowshares alive for a while,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so you have fought to keep Plowshares from experiencing death by really investing your time and talent. I think it's on two levels. One of them is maintaining the artistic integrity of Plowshares and not bringing in Chitlin Circuit type of plays that would sell a little bit more easily, and making sure that the stories that you tell are stories that really reflect really well on our culture and history. Is that true, Gary?
That's true. We've fought really hard about that. Not been that hard because I just say no, and then folks
That's
either,
the benefit of being the founder. The answer is no.
But I think that the economic consequences of that.
It has. I mean, you see other people fare well in regards to changing and distorting and claiming that is blackness now. That's the new blackness. And you just have to keep reminding people, well, no, there are some values here that are consistent, whether we're talking about 1840 or 1920 or 2020.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are also joined by Mike Rafferty, the new president and CEO of New Detroit. And I want to just say
He's still new?
I mean, he
You
is
still new, Mike?
7 months, less than a year is new.
So but sometimes I'm like, isn't it time for my gold watch?
I know
7 months goes by fast.
Seven months of hard work that feels like about 7 years, right?
You got it sometimes.
But I'm so excited to welcome Mike here because not only am I sitting on the board, but my family legacy is connected to New Detroit. My uncle was the first president of New Detroit. And so to see Michael take over an organization that really must be renewed in 2020 because we have renewed challenges is just such a blessing. Can you talk about your vision, what's been going on, and where you see New Detroit heading?
Yeah, and what is New Detroit for folks
that's
who may
a
not
good
know?
point. Yes.
So Orlando, it's a good start. Happy to talk about it all. And to your point, Orlando, I was amazed when I came into the organization how many people ask me, what is New Detroit? I grew up during a time when, you couldn't watch the news without hearing some story. In the course of the month, you would hear, New Detroit being mentioned. And, for context sake, the organization was started, in 1967 after the rebellion. And I like to imagine, what it was like for folks like Henry Ford II and J.L. Hudson and Max Fisher, to come together and say, we need to create a racial justice organization, right? It was pretty obvious to me when I really got empathetic about that and said, if I'm J.L. Hudson, yeah, sure. In 1964, I probably would have said, no, I'm good. And Henry Ford probably would have said the same thing. No, I'm fine. We're already giving everybody, jobs. But when you've got tanks rolling down Woodward and blocking your department store, if you're Henry Ford and you're, going into the plant and saying, why is production down?
Right.
And why is the cost of, doing business and operating these dealerships going up? Well, Mr. Ford, it's because, this percentage of your workforce is in jail, and this percentage of your workforce is in the hospital, and this percent are dead, and this percent, it was obvious at that point that we needed an organization like this, and it was pretty monumental to have civic and business leaders come together, at the likes of the ones that I mentioned before, and Damon Keith and others. And as I was growing up, hearing stories about New Detroit, I was inspired to do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now, and it's an honor to actually be in this position. And I think part of the reason why there's so many people asking the question, "What is this organization?" is I'd say in the last decade or so, we've lost a lot of our story. We've lost a lot of our potency and a lot of our momentum. And I think there are a lot of reasons. Things like that happen. Organizations over the course of 50 years, no matter what industry you're in, sometimes, need to have new life breathed into them. Mm-hmm. That began, some time ago. I'd say in 2016, 2017, our board got together and said, with my past leadership, and said we need to reimagine how this organization looks. And I'm not sure if you were on the board at the time, Donna. But when you have national movements happening and you have a lot of innovation happening within the space of racial justice across the country, but you don't see it in one of the most racially polarized, regions
yes.
in the country, despite the fact that we also happen to be one of the most innovative regions in the country. We put out more engineers per capita than any place in the world. Why haven't we solved this problem yet? Mm-hmm. And so, the strategic plan that the planning process that we embarked upon in 2017 came up with, a strat plan for us moving forward, for the next 5 years. And some of that was, we need to consider new leadership. We need to consider, taking some of the best practices that we've seen from across the country and apply them here. We need to focus on, 3 major pillars. And actually, let me come back a bit. Talking about the history and the value of the organization, Wayne County Community College wouldn't exist if it wasn't for New Detroit. The Detroit Economic Growth Corporation was started by New Detroit. A lot of other nonprofit organizations that, my predecessors, they saw gaps, not just in the way that people of color were experiencing the city, but they were seeing systemic gaps that were causing those disparities, and started activities and initiatives and organizations that help close those gaps. And, as bad as things are right now, I honestly think if New Detroit wasn't around, they'd be a lot worse. And so in taking that legacy and that strategy into what's coming up, we've got to come out of, and, Donna said before, I don't believe in, just the programs, and that sort of thing. I think, we were deeply embedded in sort of one-off programming. And when I came in, I'm like, how many people are we touching with this? How many people are in the region? We have nearly 5 million people in the region. And for an organization of this history and this magnitude and this prowess, and with a problem as big as we have, we can't solve institutional or structural racism with, a couple hundred people a year. Right. We have to hit scale, when it comes to an issue like this. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing is focusing on things like policy, focusing on, becoming a collective impact type of an organization, being a thought leader. Someone from Detroit needs to be out there when something like Ferguson happens, when the Black Lives Matter movement happens. We actually need to be, right there, front stage representing the problems and the people that we have in this community.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. I think that, in 1967, when New Detroit was formed, just after the rebellion, racism was a lot different in 1967 than it is in 2020.
No doubt.
And you need different weapons or different tools to address racism now. And so one of the things that you've done is you've begun to look at who's going to be working in your organization.
Yes. And
you brought in a brilliant fighter for justice in Detroit as a community planner, somebody who really is conscious of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
You want to talk about her and introduce her and talk about her role?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons
Needs no introduction.
One of the
get
many reasons I thought it was such,
Right.
an opportunity and a blessing to be able to bring Lauren on is because she's somebody who's not afraid to speak, for herself and for her community. So I'm not going to do too much introducing. I will say though that it's amazing to have such a great partner in this work. What motivated me, I'm going to get off my soapbox in a second, but what really, the things that motivated me to do this stuff, the problems are palpable, right? We feel it and we can count it. When you've got both quantitative and qualitative experiences in your reality, you got to, there's something to do. We don't all, everybody who's listening and everybody who I engage with, we don't all, see the same problem. And that's part of the problem, right?
Right.
And, our job in this organization and what I was hoping to build was an organization, an institution that's able to, standardize our experience, so that we can really act. When you got a problem like this, and I mean, like I said before, I got 2 kids. I don't want them inheriting what we have.
Right.
Anybody who's listening, we've all, you know somebody who's, doe-eyed and innocent, and just fast forward 20 years.
Right, right.
Let's not create this.
Yeah.
Let's not
Right.
give them this. All right. So I mean,
Right.
in order to really fight against the kind of things that we've got going on right now, we need all hands on deck. And Lauren's got some of those capable hands I know of around this work. And it was, like I said, it was a blessing when she said, "Yeah, let's partner." I'm like, all right. You had me at a low. All right. So that said, Lauren, please, tell them about you.
Work.
What do you want to know?
So I guess what was the proposition that made you say, yes, you've been on your own for a few years, working for yourself and, doing okay, working for yourself. And I know that it had to be a pretty
It was a negotiation. Mike made it sound really easy.
Yeah.
We had talked for a little bit about what it would take for, as I call it, going back in.
Yeah.
So
what made you come back in?
Well, the opportunity to work with Mike. There's a very short list of people in town that I would want to work for. As I think it is important to have not necessarily dissenting voices, but critically questioning voices. I feel like there are only a couple people that would allow their staff to do that, and Mike was one of those people. I was like, do I have to temper my feelings and my comments now that I'm going to work for this organization? He's like, no, that's why I want you to come over here. I was like, word? Okay.
All right.
Like, you want to pay me to be that way? To do what I do and be myself? I was like, wow, that's amazing. So, yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity to, have a platform and, a back of house to support the work. It's really hard as a singular consultant to be trying to do anti-racism work. But when you've got, an organization and a framework and a board and some structure, you can get more done.
Yeah.
So
what's your first order of business?
Well, there are a couple of things. Can I talk about these things, Mike?
Please. Yep.
So there are a couple of different programs. We really want to focus on race in public spaces. And we want to hit it from 2 sides. So we're going to do a series of public events, conversations about that, and some coalition building. So not just talking. We want to get people who manage public spaces, recognizing that lots of the entities that manage our public spaces are white-led. And so when you think about how Black folks don't feel comfortable in these spaces, we were like, oh, maybe it's because white-led organizations lead them. So we want to bring those people to the table with some legacy residents to have a public conversation about what it takes to have a just space is what we're calling it.
Can I ask a question?
Space. Of course.
When you talk about just space, I think that's brilliant, and I'm excited about that because, having been a native Detroiter, Belle Isle no longer feels like it's
they're on the list.
And so let's talk about that for a minute, though, because
Yeah.
my biggest issue with Belle Isle is, first of all, those ridiculous booths that never stop you, but they just sit there.
They just sit
And the second thing is getting kicked off the island at 10 p.m. It's ridiculous to me that a police car will pull up behind you and escort you off the island if you're not gone by 10 p.m. My grandparents, my people are from Detroit, from Detroit, and my grandparents used to sleep on Belle Isle on a hot night
In the summer,
when they
yeah.
didn't have air conditioning. And now 10 p.m. I've got a state trooper coming up behind me, and the only place I'm safe is the Detroit Yacht Club.
Interesting.
So-
Twice I have been approached by state troopers in my car reading a book. You know, sometimes I just like to go park by the water, read my book. 2 times a trooper has like come up and like looked in the window. Like, what could I possibly be doing in a car by myself that is,
Before 10 o'clock?
criminal activity? It was daytime. I'm reading in the afternoon.
Handbook
It's
to
daytime.
terrorism. I don't know.
It's a totally different vibe. And just even though there's nobody in that little guard structure, just the presence of a guard structure like triggers something in you.
Exactly. Why would you even put it there if you're not going to man it?
Because
and I don't think you should.
I bet you there are people that would turn around.
I'm like, there's no one here, and I don't want a ticket. So, before I knew that they weren't, it's crazy.
But, the other thing is that I feel like you can't be outside after 10 p.m. in Detroit. So I went to the Park Restaurant, and I'm leaving the Park Restaurant, having a conversation with my friend, and we're just talking. And I got escorted to my car. I don't know why I keep getting kicked out of spaces, but I can only imagine if it's me, it's happening to other people too, because I'm standing on Dan Gilbert's space and I have to stand on the sidewalk.
Yes.
And I even couldn't stand on the sidewalk, so I had to cross the street. And I don't even know if these security guards really know the rules. You can't be on the Riverwalk after 10 p.m. And so the question is, why can't Detroiters be outside anymore?
That's interesting. We should talk about that.
You should ask that. That should be one of your questions as you moderate this conversation.
Yeah, I have so much to say. When I think about the causes of the riot in '67, one of the line items that the Kerner report found was like lack of public spaces. So when we think about we're shrinking the places that we can be in and what time we can be there, like where do you try? What's bubbling up? But those are people we want to get. We've been talking about inviting the DDP to our public conversations, having them participate, and Quicken Loans people, so that the people that are doing those things like that can be in conversation with someone like you and be like, what are you doing?
I think one of the cool things that you mentioned about the Kerner report is there a possibility for New Detroit to look at the recommendations of the Kerner report that were completely ignored and then put that in front of people and say, what would happen if we honored?
It's tricky. I mean, my brain thinks like that a lot, but I'm afraid to like put it out there because I don't want people to be like, oh, she's trying to incite a riot. I'm like, but if we're looking at the causes, like all those things are still in play except for the police brutality at the level that it was. But a lot of the other causes are things that are bubbling up if you're paying attention.
Yeah. Now I want to take that one. So when going back to the 3 pillars and policy being one of those things, we know we need to influence policy in a lot of ways, and one of them is like I said, everyone's got their value proposition. J.L. Hudson had his value proposition. It was tanks, right? We have our value proposition. It's oppression, right? And we all want to see and if we give everyone the right value proposition, things will change. And I think, on the policy side, we have to double down on our intel. We have to be, like solid thought leaders. We need to make sure that we're collecting as much data as we can on, on the actual experience, on all the gaps that exist. We need to be able to analyze those things next to what you were talking about. What haven't we done in from the recommendations made more than 50 years ago? What if those things happen? What are the calls to action that come from that, right? So this might sound remarkably similar to some of the other things that people are talking about now with data. Detroit Future City being one of them, and I'll be I'm gonna get ahead of myself right now, but I just Anika and I talked today, and we're like, okay, we're partnering, and so we're now partners. New Detroit,
breaking news,
excellent,
are partners on this very thing. Everybody from Governor Whitmer down to local community organizations need to be empowered to understand how to make the world a better place, particularly for people of color in places like Detroit, right? And so, your idea, is spot on. I'm validating it right now and saying, just keep your eyes open. It's coming.
All right. Love to get in on that, too.
Lauren, what's the second thing that you're working on?
So in response to the experiences that some Black folks are having in certain businesses, we are working on a Just Space program that will kind of, allow a transformative experience to happen at a bar restaurant. So that we're piloting it there first, but we've got a 3-month engagement scheduled with a particular bar/restaurant that has had racial incidents in the past. They had asked us to come on and kind of come mediate when we have a racial incident. We're like, we want to help you before you have a racial incident. So we're going to engage them in a process that
Black
involves
people calm.
Well, we're going to engage them in some interviews. We're going to send some secret shoppers in there. Then we're going to have some facilitated all-staff dialogues with everybody that works there.
I hope they paying y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
it's a
good.
3-month engagement.
Good.
So, like I said, it's a pilot. We hope to do it more.
Pay us.
But, yeah, keep a lookout on the outcomes of that project. But I'm really excited to kind of tackle some of the sentiment around us not feeling welcome in spaces. What does it look like if an organization like ours actually works with one of these businesses and engages them in a process by which they can be a just space?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I?
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned before about the architect saying, there is a such thing that, like makes Black people feel comfortable and welcome in a place. But I'll be honest and say that the one thing that will make anybody, feel welcome or not is the interpersonal engagement.
Absolutely.
In spaces. And we can all relate to walking into a space and just feeling the energy and the vibe be, like pushing us out. And a lot of that is, treatable. A lot of that is, restaurants and things like that, they do safe serve training and things like that, and they invest in it. Well, great.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a training for the most part that's going to allow retail spaces to, make sure that their values and their principles align with the people who are, engaging with us. And I'll say, the guy, the bar restaurant that we're working with, he came to us saying exactly what Lauren said, and in short order in that conversation, it was obvious to me that his heart was in the right place. He just didn't know what to do with it, right? And so, we're acting as the defibrillator and getting that heart to pump.
And it's an inside-outside game for them, too. So we want to make sure that there's no racism amongst their, internal practices and also how they interact with customers.
Through, y'all.
I'm excited about that.
Through.
So I just wanted to lift up something that you said earlier, which I thought was really important, and that was, can you say what's on your mind? Can you speak your truth and still be employed? And I think that in Detroit, people have really feared speaking their truth, right?
Say it, Donna. Ring the bell.
And I was reminded of that today or yesterday because returning to the subject of Kobe passing away and the untimeliness of it, I realized that I had a Twitter account that was a ghost Twitter account where I could speak my truth. And the name of my Twitter account is Black Mamba. And the picture is a picture of Angela Davis. And I created that as a space. So, Carrie, I've interacted with you. I'm like, I'm Black Mamba, right?
Well, you just outed yourself now.
I knew.
Now everybody's
well,
going to
now
know.
everybody can know because, now we have this podcast and I found my voice and my courage to speak. And I work for an organization that allows me to speak.
Donna, can we talk about why that fear exists? I feel like that's why we haven't made any progress.
Right.
But from who do people?
Funders, from the city.
Yeah.
This feeling that if I say something critical of you, we went through a whole system of emergency management, EAA, funders doing inappropriate things. I'm not going to name them. And people were afraid to speak out. If we don't have dialogue, how can we hold systems accountable? Even if I'm wrong, let me be wrong because I'm speaking, you correct me, as opposed to letting me hold my feelings in. And so I really appreciate the fact that you are at New Detroit because you are creating a pathway. Your courage and your leadership will create pathways for more people to speak out. And
I have to tell you, with my Live 6 experience, I felt like I spoke out too much and got burned.
Yes.
I've been kind of traumatized. And
I've
been very quiet the past couple
we've
years
had
because
that conversation.
of it.
A lot about.
You don't see me posting
recovery.
anything. I haven't written any op-eds. Yes.
I had a similar experience for another organization I was working to 4 or 5 years ago when I created Detroit Black Mama because I had I got some feedback that my opinions weren't correct. And I was so afraid of offending people in power. And so when I got to ECN, I was afraid. When we first started doing this podcast, it was the scariest thing I've ever done because I'm speaking my truth. And I'm like, Orlando, can we go back and edit that call, JG? And it was scary.
Now
it was
we can
out there.
empower people.
And what I found out was that when I spoke my truth, other people, first of all, had to accept. Now, everybody doesn't like it. But there are people who really appreciated somebody putting it on the table. Same thing with Orlando. And so I appreciate you coming here and acknowledging how hard it is, especially, I think, for Black women to speak our truth in the city of Detroit.
Because we'll get shut down.
Yeah.
We honor both of you tonight. Thank y'all, man. Listen, this has been we're running long, and I don't care. It's been an amazing experience having Gary, Mike, and Lauren here. One more time, Gary, give the information about your show. Yeah.
Show is called In. It opens this Friday, January 31st. It runs through February 16th at Marygrove College Theater. You can get tickets on our website, which is www.plowsharestheatre.org, and theater is spelled T-R-E.
You better say that. So if you have, because that gets me too. I'm trained in the theater.
All right.
If you got young actors who want to get involved in this production in your company, how can they do that?
We have one show of the three that we're doing before the fall that is still that hasn't gotten cast yet, and so there are opportunities for young Black women to be involved.
Sweet.
So all they got to do is they go to that website. They can also give me their contact information. We can get them on our actors mailing
Go
list.
audition.
Yeah, and we're going to be scheduling auditions for that show relatively soon. That'll be a show I won't be directing. I'm bringing a young woman in from out of town.
Yeah, oh wow! Yeah. Imagine a Black woman directing Black women.
What do you think? What do you think? You think it's good? You think it'll work?
I think it's good. Somebody tell Tyler Perry. How can we plug into New Detroit? How can people plug in and get involved? I'm sorry. Was that too much? Okay, my bad.
It was great.
So the website is www.newdetroit.org. You are going to see a lot more hashtags coming from us and a lot more stuff on social media. Look us up on Facebook and Instagram.
And the gram.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
And we'll be sure
we got to get
spread the
Authentically
word.
Detroit in that mix too somehow.
Yes.
We got to figure out how to do that. Yeah. So, oh man, Donna, shout outs.
Oh, wow. I'm not ready for that. Never am.
You want me to go first?
Yes, you go first.
All right. So I want to shout out Yusuf Sakor for sending me the U.S. News article. Kirk Mays and Marlon Stoudemire and Yodi Mesfin Johnson, who were my co-panelists last week at Black All Over the World that was co-hosted between Authentically Detroit and Urban Consulate. Look out for that live recording to be released by Authentically Detroit later on this week. I want to shout out my friend Kevin Irwin and the Same 24 brand. JG for just being a trooper. He made sure the live recording went out without a hitch. JG takes care of us, y'all. So I just wanted to make sure I shouted him out. And my friend Jawan Jackson, one of my good friends I went to college with, he's in Ain't Too Proud the musical, and he was nominated for a Grammy yesterday.
Nice. Hello.
I have a friend who was nominated for a Grammy. He didn't take it home, but I get to say forever that my friend is nominated for a Grammy. Is a Grammy nominee. And thoughts and prayers to Kobe Bryant's wife and surviving children.
Yes.
Donna.
I don't have any shout outs, to be honest with you. I just want to shout out our guest today. I want to shout out Lauren for taking this role to the next level. I want to shout out Mike for hiring Lauren. I think it's
Mike Rafferty's a goat, yo.
It's a great move.
He's the goat.
I want to shout out Gary Anderson, my friend, who is really doing his thing. I'm so excited about going to see In on Friday, and we'll keep you guys posted as to the shows that Plowshares is doing ahead, and also the public spaces event that you're doing with New Detroit. We want to make sure that the people in our listening audience are also aware of that.
Yep. Oh, one last shout out to Sarah Alvarez and Candace Fortman. They announced an outlier merger today that's supposed to be really good for the organization and their cause. So shout out to them.
Who are they merging with?
I can't think of the name of the company right now. I'll post it when we post the episode.
I do want to just point out one more thing. The story about Nixon and black capitalism is actually a story from the New York Times in March 2019. We will post that on our Facebook page so you can read that in its entirety as well.
Good,
cool.
Good.
Do our guests have shout outs?
I got none.
Okay.
Hey, Mom, what's up?
Hey, Mom. You good, Lauren? You got a shout out?
I'm good.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Catch the wave.